Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to planning the 2020-21 instrumental and general music school year. Today we have an incredible panel, and I can't wait to bring up. And before we do that, I'm just going to share a few updates with you. So excited to see. Oh, I see people from Charles County are here, Prince George's, Baltimore County, Detroit, Michigan. Wow. Hi, Judy. Nice to see you. So today we will be presenting an hour-long panel. This is, I think, our fourth or fifth in the series as we work through each arts discipline and sharing the resource of our Arts Together plan. So in the beginning of our time in this pandemic of COVID-19, the Fine Arts Supervisor Network of Maryland got together and created two resources that have been recently published as of June 1st. The first is Arts Together. And Arts Together is a planning guidance document for arts educators in Maryland public schools. It looks at the COVID-19 response and a pathway forward for all 5 arts disciplines. So music, theater, dance, visual art, and media arts. What's exciting about this document is it's a living document. So we have a meeting scheduled next week to revise and update the document with any new learnings that have occurred since its June 1st publication date. Today, we have panelists that helped to create this document from the instrumental and general music chapters. What we're encouraging everyone to do is to read the general recommendations and the recommendations for your arts discipline. Today, we are combining general music and instrumental music, not because they're similar, but because a lot of the recommendations are very similar in terms of materials, products, classroom space. So we'll be addressing that today. In addition, an incredible report called the SEL Through the Arts report is a crosswalk of SEL competencies and arts learning experiences in all 5 arts disciplines. This report is incredible in its nature because there is no report like it that shows and demonstrates how SEL competence is built through arts learning experiences. And this will catapult us all as we begin to really investigate the ways that arts classrooms can further integrate SEL into their spaces. This summer, Maryland Centers for Creative Classrooms, which is the professional learning suite of the Maryland State Department of Education's Fine Arts Office, is offering over 125 hours of professional learning looking at SEL, mental health, anti-bias arts education, culturally responsive arts education, how to build relationships online, collaborative structures online, and how to incorporate student voice and agency during remote learning. So if you're looking for professional learning next Tuesday, you can visit our website and you'll find a new catalog of summer professional learning. All right, well, now I'm going to start to bring up our panelists. My name is Alicia Lee, and I'm so thrilled to see that there's over 200 people registered for today's chat, which is really lovely. And we're going to get started with bringing up our first panel. So panel number 1 consists of 2 fine arts supervisors. First, we have Dr. Randy Rumpf, who is the instructional specialist for fine and performing arts. I'm sorry, that's not true. He's the supervisor of pre-K to 12 fine arts for Montgomery County Public Schools. And Andrew Blumhart, who is the instructional specialist for fine and performing arts for Charles County Public Schools. So as they come up, we can't wait to see them. Today we're going to be talking, we're going to kick off. Hello, how are you?
Hi, Alicia.
Hi, Andrew. We're going to kick off. Hey, Dr. Rumpf.
Hey.
We're going to kick off by really talking about what's happened so far. So if we think back to March, due to COVID-19 and the rapid closure of schools, local school systems launched continuity of learning plans. The arts are essential content and are a part of a well-rounded education in Maryland. What are the benefits, Andrew, of instrumental and general music education continuing to occur even in this remote place? What is the benefit of making sure that continuity of learning plans include general and instrumental music?
Yeah, so I want to talk about 3 really important benefits that we've seen during the continuity of learning, and that's community, culture, and creativity. Conveniently, they all start with C.
Yeah, I like that.
Community, culture, creativity. So I don't know about everyone else, but I know the date March 13th. It's going to be stuck in my head forever because it marks, the changing of an era, a total paradigm shift in the way that we do things. And when I think about that, I think the arts were some of the first communities to respond to this. Broadway, Met, visual artists, military ensembles, all opening their work up for free to everyone because they understood how important it was to keep families and communities and cultures connected. And I found a quote. This was in an article by Dr. Scott Edgar called "The Student Voice During COVID," and I think it's one that we can all relate to. It's really pretty touching. The quote is from a high school student: "I'll miss having my second family. They were the people that I went to when things were rough at home, and now I have nowhere to go. Yet they're still reaching out to me." I just thought that was so beautiful, and it illustrates what we all know to be true, and that's that the community that we create is really like a second family to a lot of our students.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So many of us became arts educators because of those strong bonds that were developed in arts classrooms.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we're living through a time where community is being disrupted, culture is being challenged. There's a lot going on, and the arts have given our students a way to respond to what's going on in the world right now. In Charles County, there was a student at North Point High School who told me he was devastated, by the cancellation of the concert season of State Soul and Ensemble. And Memorial Day was coming up, and he wanted to honor his grandfather who served in Vietnam. And so he pulled together students, teachers, community members to perform in a virtual Memorial Day concert. It was so cool. And it had more than 5,000 views, and he told me from 48 different states tuned into this.
Wow. Andrew, when you go back to the audience, will you drop a link in the chat so we can get his views even higher?
Sure. I'd love to. Yeah. And I thought it was a great way for him to keep the community together and keep culture alive, even though we had to be distanced. We've also seen, around the state, we've seen a lot of creative responses to this. Of course, there's the virtual performance, which many of us are learning, how much work really goes into that. I saw an 8th grader. She put together a virtual performance of herself playing guitar, bass, drums, piano to a jazz chart that they didn't get to perform. It's great. We've all seen the a cappella style videos. We saw in general music, we saw a 3rd grader practicing his DJ skills with Apple's GarageBand.
Nice.
And I saw one thing that was just so touching. It was kind of an inside look. A parent sent me a video of her 1st grade daughter participating in her general music class virtually. And, to see the 1st grader singing along with the teacher, showing her parents how much she loved it, keeping the macro and micro beats, just the pride on her face was amazing. And, I think this illustrates a lot of the opportunities that have really come to light, along with the challenges. And just one more thing I want to say, to teachers around the state, I know so many teachers, so many effective teachers have found it a struggle all of a sudden. They're used to being really effective, really great at what they do. We have some really amazing teachers in Charles County, and I saw people struggle to learn and adapt, but they did. And that's one of the bright sides to this. We have expanded teacher capacity so quickly, like never before. And, we're continuing to do so over the summer. We have at least half of our teachers working together, volunteering to work together over the summer to get prepared for next year.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Their response has been fantastic. So yeah, just to wrap it up, the arts are more important now than they ever were. We need the arts. If you remember the 3 C's, we need the arts because they grow communities, it grows culture, and it grows creativity within us.
Absolutely. What an incredible statement. I love these new 3 C's of Charles County, which is the 4th C. I love that. That's really short. I love it. I love that idea of community, culture, and creativity. I think that's so terrific to make sure that we're really spreading a message that really condenses what the power of the arts and what they can do. So thank you, Andrew, for sharing those vignettes from County. Appreciate that. Dr. Rumpf, what's happening over in your neck of the woods, all the way across the state, right? What's happening in Montgomery County? Why do you think it's so important that we make sure that continuity of learning plans include instrumental and general music?
Yeah, First of all, thanks for having me. And I
Oh.
can't start without having a shout out to the MCPS teachers that did a nice job of picking this up and running with the ball with it toward the end zone. And Andrew was spot on. The big challenge was the shift and how we had to think. But the good thing is the teachers instantly recognized that they still had to be part of the procedures. They still had to be part of the classroom day, as it were, whatever you want to call it, a day. Just to really make sure that the students had some form of outlet for creativity, but also to remain engaged in content. The way MCPS approached this is we created central modules that teachers had the options to use, and we incorporated lessons based around the normal, creating, responding, connecting, and such. So what we saw, obviously, was there was still a lot of performing that was going on. Our secondary students were putting together virtual ensembles for graduation ceremonies. We had a 5th grade band that put together a virtual ensemble for a graduating ceremony. And we also had, like jazz bands and show choirs, and even drama departments were putting recordings together from their musicals and such. So you still saw that performing. But then as we got into week 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it kept growing, you saw the shift in what teachers were doing. They started to shift to the creating side, allowing the students to gain that independence and exploring some things that they wanted to explore. And then we also saw with part of our continuity of learning, they had to have virtual office hours. And what we saw is literally the band kids, the choir kids were just hanging out with the teachers, talking about whatever, as long as it had something to do with music. So it continued to build the idea of community that Andrew brought up, not just within the school, but within their actual physical community and the surrounding areas, because a lot of the schools in the area have different economic needs and such around. So it's allowed the students to still have a sense of normalcy as we were moving through this continuity of learning process. So you saw this shift. You saw the shift from performance, and where teachers were normally hesitant to try to give students independence, and you're not worrying about rehearsing A to B to get to the concert and worrying about C to D falling apart because the clarinets aren't watching. You were able to, the teachers, I thought, were actually able to kind of sit back a little bit and look at the larger picture and how they're approaching their students. Did we just lose Alicia?
Maybe. Randy, we found that too, that it allowed for more differentiation, and it allowed for, to move beyond just the performance of the large ensemble.
Yeah, I mean, you saw students doing more collaboration. You saw them doing peer reviews of each other's performances. The clarinets were doing online chats about how they were playing a certain section or such. So you saw the students really step up and take that role of leadership that they can, and that we oftentimes are just hesitant because we're not used to it. It's not how we were taught. It's not what we were taught in our teacher preparation programs. But then, once you have the sense of freedom and the students are in it, you go. Just a personal story from when I was in the classroom. I tell this story all the time. As I tried this thing of just having kids explore something outside of performance, and I had a clarinet player who's the most quiet girl I've ever taught in my teaching career. She decided she wanted to learn Brazilian hand drumming techniques. So that was her project, was Brazilian hand drumming techniques. And then she fell in love with it and still plays. So it's just that continuation as you build into it and letting the students have that freedom, but performing will still be there. We're still going to have the ensembles. You still have the responsibilities. It's just opening up our lens of what we're considering music education.
I think that's great. I think if there's something that we take away from this idea of teachers are incredible people. I come from a long line of teachers, so I'm very biased. I think teachers are the most brilliant people in the world, begin to teach. So I'm always grateful for teachers. And one thing that I've seen, I hear from you, is that, teachers really did meet this challenge. I mean, this is a challenge, really. You're right. This date, March 13th, is a date we will always remember. And so teachers have really met this challenge. And what we've all come away with, I think, is a new way to think about student-centered education as we move forward, right? By allowing students to really explore big ideas and be intrinsically motivated to gain the skills and the knowledge that they need to be successful in their playing of their instrument, or in the singing, or in the macro beat circle, right? So, but it's really led by from the student's perspective in terms of a really classrooms that I've seen so much classrooms that are really being guided more and more by inquiry And so I think that's a wonderful piece in terms of elevating our arts education throughout the state to continue to keep. I want to thank you both so much for coming on and sharing these vignettes. So we've got a couple new terms. I love this idea of the continuity of community that Dr. Rumpf talked about, that the arts provide. So thank you both, and we're going to bring up our next panel. Thank you both for your contribution to today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, that was incredible to hear about what's happening all across the state, from Montgomery County all the way down to Charles County. Folks are using the arts to continue to stay connected. And so we're going to bring up two supervisors of fine art who were instrumental in in the creation of the Arts Together report. First, we have Kimberly Hirschman from Frederick County Public Schools, where she's the curriculum specialist for secondary visual and performing arts. And we also have Judith Hawkins from Prince George's County Public Schools, who is the PK-12 vocal and general music supervisor. How are you today, Kimberly?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, of course. It's our pleasure. So we're going to get right into it. So the MSDE Maryland Together report shares that Maryland schools will look very different in fall 2020. Hi, Judith. Good to see you. And arts instruction is an essential part of a public school education in Maryland schools and must continue in distance, hybrid, and in-person learning models, which we just heard how important that is from our colleagues Randy and Andrew. The network of Maryland Fine Arts Supervisors prepared a collaborative document to support fine arts programs in Maryland public schools. And so our next two guests are committee members of the Arts Together document work group, who really jumped right in to be able to share this document with all arts education stakeholders. It's really supposed to be used to launch arts educators into planning for the year ahead, with the understanding that each local school system will have its own procedures and models based on the nature of this pandemic. Before we get started, I want to share my screen and share we have this beautiful executive summary, and we're going to kind of base our conversation today on that. So Judith, I'm going to start with you. Fine arts educators, specifically instrumental and general music educators, should continue to teach in their content throughout continuity of learning. And why is that important that we stress that?
The document clearly lines that we are to continue in our continuity because that's just what we do. How about that? You don't ask a plumber to come in to redecorate your home. And so when we are not aligned to what we do and how we do instruction in the best possible means, then that interpretation is open to school-based administrators and anyone else who wishes to do so. So in our document, we clearly outline that instruction should remain and should continue in the art forms, and that there should be no interruption to this. Now, I've said this before, we are still in the business of making musicians. And the modality is where we become flexible. You already mentioned it, face-to-face, virtual, or hybrid. And so the document gives us some ideas on how do we do both and what did they look like? How do we continue instruction in a safe manner? And so my thinking or reimagining for the fall is that we begin to or rather not begin to, but keep in mind that our ultimate goal is to build that musician, and are the experiences and the lessons that we are offering, providing students with quality music making that is safe. And that is the key here. What are we doing? What are we doing that is safe according to research? Not what you think you heard, or it's based in sound science. And so we're looking forward to seeing that aerosol report that's coming out next month to see just how much singing and playing and touching we can do in safety.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're all looking forward to that report. Even theater folks, right? Will be able to utilize the information in that aerosol report. If you're looking for that report, you can stay in touch with us through the Arts Together report. As soon as it's available, we will share it in an upgraded document. Kimberly, I'm coming over to you. So curricular options for all 4 artistic processes, so creating, performing, responding, and connecting, can be delivered in all environments. So will you tell us a little bit about that and why it's so important to make sure we're continuing to teach across all 4 artistic processes?
Absolutely. And quite honestly, there should be no question about it that all 4 of these components are essential to what we're doing in all of our classes. I will say panel 1 absolutely knocked it out of the park. So everything they said about everything we learned and all of a sudden, we had the shift to student-centered classroom is just a fantastic takeaway. I do want to say though, if you feel like you failed in any way, that's okay. We have to be prepared to really move forward. And I know, the one thing we do know is that not every district is going to look the same next year. So even neighboring counties, some of us might have, the fortune to be face-to-face like normal. Some of us might be a split where we're hybrid, where some students are in the building and some are virtual. And then some of us might be entirely virtual. So whatever avenue your district goes to, I would encourage you to think about all 4 of these categories and how you can effectively create a program that meets your students' needs and gives them all of the voice that they need to have shared. If you are at all face-to-face, I would really encourage you to prioritize music making together. So our students miss each other and they miss you, and they really miss having that direct feedback. I watched a great webinar from the Grammy Music Foundation about, students really miss having their teacher tell them about their playing and about their singing. So anything you can do to really think about, if you have face-to-face time, what's most important to give to your students right then and there versus what can you do to support that face-to-face time? Can you give them a creating project that ties directly into what you did face-to-face that then can lead into something that they're responding to? And then, of course, the connecting piece. There are so many things we learned about our students in this time apart. I had so many teachers say, I never knew so-and-so felt this way, and I never knew so-and-so thought this way. So I think when we move forward, take what we learned in the experience when we were not together and start to implement everything that you did learn and not just go back to normal. We have to be done with, some of our old way of thinking. We have an opportunity here to really give students a true music education that's not just preparing for the next concert and the next performance, that really connects with them in each of these areas. And, specifically, I've seen a lot of the online performances, and some districts have the luxury of having that capability and some don't, and that's okay. Think about how you could implement something that works for you and the tools that you have. So instead of, putting together that mass concert or mass class performance, what if the students just turned in their own recording and you were able to link them all and have sort of a digital recital? So there are small scale ideas that work for you. Please don't just throw your hands up and say, this isn't going to work for me. So think about what works for you in your district and certainly collaborate with your colleagues. There's a lot of information out there.
Absolutely. And we have so much to learn around what is possible in terms of remote music making. And I've learned something new this week, even about some things that are possible in terms of performance, right? And thinking differently about online performance in live time and what could be possible. So as that information rolls out, we'll be sure to share it. And I love this idea of making sure we're continuing when we return to in-person learning to make sure that even in your ensembles that students are creating, that students are responding to big ideas, creatively creating new works that are possibly aligned to the big ideas of the composers they're studying in their already established repertoire pieces, that students are continuing to respond and continuing to connect, not just perform. I think it's really important, and all of us have really seen some different ways that students come alive when that happens. Judith, let's throw out to you. So sharing student work must continue with modifications for digital platforms or physical distancing. And why is it important that we still continue to make sure performances occur?
So, we've all been discussing about reimagining performances. And so that, because it might not be viewed as safe right now, face-to-face, that does not negate the power of a performance. And so what I want us to begin to think about is showing our audiences the prep that goes behind the performance so that parents and even the students can begin to express, have more, because when we go to concerts, we don't hear the musicians talk about how difficult this measure 66 to 67 or 70 was and how I had to practice and slow it down and how I got that particular passage straightened out. But I think this is an opportunity to let students explain or express the challenges they had with the music and what they did to perfect their performance. And so that ties right back into the responding to music and how we present. How do we know a work is ready for presentation? And so students get to share that. Now, I've seen it in art classes all the time, but we have not used that in the music classes. And so I saw a wonderful idea in the chat. We have to look at a process over product.
Yeah.
And so I just want to steal that from the chat.
I love that. I love that. Let's all think about that. How can we learn from our colleagues in other disciplines by having artist statements as a part of the performance process? How great.
Yeah.
What a great idea.
Yeah.
I want to throw it back to teachers and staff need training in proper sanitization of materials and physical spaces. Why is that important that occurs, that teachers are ready to get that training?
All right, so this is obviously a huge topic, probably one of the biggest concerns right now, and health and safety of students and staff is going to be absolutely number one. Whenever we return to school or whatever that return looks like, some of us are even preparing to potentially return to marching band rehearsals as early as August. So we have to consider the fact that there are still families that may not feel comfortable sending their students to school. There will be people that want more from you. So if your district doesn't open all the way, they will be unhappy because they feel completely comfortable sending their student to school all of the time. What I would suggest is, every district is working on sort of a logistics plan. So they're going to give direction on the cleaning of certain areas, but we know that sometimes our areas come with a little more consideration. So I can tell you that one of the things we're working on in Frederick County is the brainstorming through eliminating or greatly reducing shared materials and shared surfaces. I would encourage you as individual teachers to really think through your own classroom and what items you have there that perhaps, you've always done it this way, but maybe next year you need to do it a different way because, we don't want to all be sharing the same drums. So the earlier that you can start your own thinking process about your physical space, the more prepared that you will be. And I certainly encourage you to communicate with, supervisors or people in your county about how you can make your space a completely safe space. Another thing to consider is, your budget. Is your budget going to be maybe not spent on buying the $50 orchestra, repertoire that you normally take to adjudication, but you need to be purchasing, everyone needs their own individual, rock stop, or you're buying more valve oil for your classroom, or if you're elementary general, is every kid, can you afford or can you seek out the funding for every student to have their own egg shaker and rhythm sticks? So there are going to be things to really consider here with eliminating or reducing any shared materials. I also think, there are still some questions about who can do cleaning. So are there ways that you can make your classroom process move smoothly? So they go in one door, and as they're walking out, probably at more upper levels, can they take their own wipe and then disinfect their own music stand and drop it in the trash can on the way out? So think about your actual process of in and out.
That's a great point. I love that idea of really building into regular classroom procedures. We're going to have to really align whatever the procedures are for your local school system on sanitization. That's great. And people should look forward to that training to come from the locals this summer. And we'll be helping each other along the way to kind of think through that. And the supervisors, of course, are in constant communication and collaboration on ways to support teachers. And Judith, our last point of our executive summary, supporting student engagement in and through the arts must occur. And why is it so important that we continue to support to make sure students are continuing to be supported to engage in the arts?
So I think I want to bring us back to last Embrace, where we saw that young man dancing in his kitchen. And I thought that was just super. I mean, I didn't care what kind of format because I really don't know. But the thing is that we saw him engaging in what he loved to do, and that is to dance. And I think that was key for all of us at that point. How do we, as musicians, keep students engaged, whether it's instrumental or in general music classes, and that we keep students actively expressing who they are through our art form. And I think this also ties beautifully to that SEL document that's also coming out of our network of supporters, is that when students are engaged in the art form, they are afforded opportunities to express how they feel in a safe environment and through the art form. Mm-hmm. And so I can't tell you how many COVID-19 songs I've heard from theory classes, piano classes. I mean, things where students were creating their own music that was the soundtrack to their life at that moment. Yeah. And so what I feel at this point is that we need to take a cue from our students and understand that this is important to them, and we should also allow the space for that kind of engagement to take place.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Kimberly, tell us, what else can we expect to find in the Arts Together report in the general chapters?
In those chapters, we have a teaching and learning section, maintaining social distance, accommodations for smaller groups, materials and supplies, sanitization, some staffing recommendations, and some scheduling recommendations.
Awesome. That's a lot of stuff. A lot of chock full of information. I know that the document can be daunting. How do we know? Because we wrote it. So we know it's big, but we really encourage everyone to read that general recommendation section and then read that instrumental and general sections, even if you're one or the other. I would read all the music sections, the vocal section too, to really think about ways that you can think about distancing in the classroom, sanitization of equipment, all those other areas that the supervisors have really prepared a robust report for. I want to commend both of you. Thank you for your work on this report. Andrew and Dr. Rumpf were also writers of the report, so we're very grateful to them. This report has been downloaded in 45 states and 45, I think it's 48 countries as of now. So we're almost a third of the way through the world, which is really lovely. So thank you both for your work. And on behalf of all of us, thank you for sharing all of this today about Arts Together and the ways that we can plan for the year ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. We're going to bring up our next panel. So our next panel has, I believe, 2 distinguished guests. And so we have Dr. Harlan Parker, coordinator of music education and the conductor of the Peabody Wind Ensemble at the Peabody Institute. We also have Brian Schneckenberger, who is the new president of Maryland Music Educators Association. As I bring them both up here with me onto the platform, we're going to be talking about, we just talked about how music is about, of course, music making is all about the process. Hi, Brian. How are you?
I'm well, and you?
Great. And hi, Harlan. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Great. Thank you for joining us today. So we just talked about how music making and music education specifically is all about the process. It's about the process, the learning process, the creative process. But right now we're going to talk about the product time. And we'd like to hear from you guys about ways that your institutions are reimagining the season. So let's see. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Schneckenberger. What's happening at MMEA? How are you guys reimagining, repurposing, and planning for the 2020-2021 performance season? We know that you guys have huge statewide performances, and that audition process is so robust all across the state. What do we have to look forward to?
Sure. So thank you, Alicia, and thank you for having me as well. The first thing I need to do is to say thank you. I need to say thank you to the Maryland Music Educators Executive Board, as well as Maryland music teachers as a whole, as they've navigated some pretty difficult times within our COVID cancellations. Within our organization themselves, they navigated the cancellation of many of our all-state festivals, as well as our state conference in March. And they made the conscious choice to pitch in as opposed to throw in the towel. And so I just want to say thank you to all of the Maryland music educators on the call right now. As one of the 4 professional arts education organizations within Maryland, MMEA presents 2 annual conferences as well as coordinates junior and senior all-state auditions and concerts. To do so, we're incorporating guidance from MSDE, including the Arts Together document. Had a great group of people working on that one. The Centers for Disease Control, some of the work that's been put out by the National Association for Music Education and FHS regarding safe practices for school instruction, large gatherings, social distancing, safe activities, and sanitization as well. In terms of our conference offerings, we did more or less forego the traditional October format for virtual conference, July 16th and 17th. We hope that you'll be able to join us for that. And we are preparing for one of 2 scenarios, either an in-person or virtual conference in March.
Oh, that's great.
In terms of all state offerings, for the coming year, we are preparing for virtual auditions. And we're working closely with our friends at NAFME to be able to do that, because they just went through that with their all national honors ensembles and the audition process for that. So a lot of lessons learned there where we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
That's
per se.
terrific. Yeah, that's great.
We are again preparing for scenarios for both in-person and or virtual opportunities for March. And we're thinking, we're using this as an opportunity as well to think about additional opportunities for making music alone and making music together, as Kim Hirschman so eloquently put it in the last panel.
That's terrific. That's really great. You and I are going to present together at the conference this summer. Very excited about that.
We're looking very forward to it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm glad to see those virtual auditions will take place. That'll be very strong. Dr. Parker, what's happening at Peabody? How are you guys preparing for a performance season with the wind ensemble, with the symphony? What will Peabody students be doing?
Well, we're facing, well, first of all, thank you for having me here and being a part of this. It's been wonderful hearing what everybody has to say. We have the same problems that everybody else does. We have to maintain social distancing, and the CDC guidelines also talks about inviting people to campus. So, there's one portion in there that says limit visitors or no visitors to campus, depending upon what you're doing. So what we're exploring is instead of the large ensembles, is having a set of chamber ensembles. One of the things that we're looking at is no more than 10 people in a room. So that means if you have a coach or conductor, then there's 9 musicians. Of course, we're like everybody else waiting for the aerosol reports to come out to see what with the spacing for wind brass instruments. With string and percussion, they can wear masks, so that will help that portion of it. But we still have to maintain social distancing and that kind of thing. And we also have to be concerned with bringing patrons to campus to attend the concerts. So we'll probably be doing a lot more live streaming of concerts this year than we have in the past. One thing I'd also like to bring up that is sort of tangential, excuse me, for all of you that are looking at what do I do, how do I find music that is suitable for 4 to 8 to 12 players, excuse me, allergies. There's a new group founded by Eric Whitaker, Frank DeKelly, and our own Brian Baumage called the Creative Repertoire Initiative. And what this group of composers is doing is taking pieces that they have already written and reducing them for players of 4 to 8 to maybe 10, so that they're creating repertoire out there. And it's from grade 1 to grade whatever you want to do. They're creating repertoire out there for instrumental ensembles that they can play and do it with our reduced instrumentation that more than likely we're going to have next year.
That's fantastic. That is great to know. So, that our creative forces are coming together just to expand the repertoire that's available at this present time. That is really remarkable. I love that. Dr. Parker, you brought up something I just wanted to mention about patrons, right? And so we haven't really talked that much about audience members, but you said that your plan is even we're not going to be able to gather 500, 1,000 people into a packed concert hall. So I love this idea of hybrid performances as well. Really having maybe a reduced number of players on stage, a reduced audience, and then live streaming those performances. And maybe that's something that we can continue to do just to make our performances more accessible, right, to people that cannot attend our performances due to any number of reasons, right? But might be able to participate virtually. So I love that idea of also thinking about the patrons. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
Thanks. Dr. Schneckenberger, will you talk to us? There's so many directions that the upcoming season can take. That's what we're really hearing from you. But there's also so much creativity in the air, which is really exciting and I think comforting. Getting a clear message to stakeholders is a critical part of planning. And so how are you working with your stakeholders to communicate the vision from MMEA and also to prepare them for the adjustments that are bound to occur along the way?
Yeah, so this is one place where you can choose to be reactive and just push information out as you get it. MMEA, we're actually working along with, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention our new superstar executive director, JJ Norman, who's really spearheading this work. But we're using this as an opportunity to grow communication within the organization to constituencies that include both our members and people who are not members yet. So in one way to do that is consistent communication through our existing accounts. So social media, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, as well as our constant contact email accounts. JJ's really kind of jumped on that as well at appropriate times when we have pertinent information to share. We're also working to clarify processes regarding auditions and registration for all state auditions and events. We had some lessons learned from last year. We went all digital, which was the good news. And the bad news is that we went all digital, but also thinking about what that format may be in light of, our ability or inability to get together face to face. Another major part of the work is to evolve the organization and to represent the interests of all Maryland music teachers and students, and to give voice to folks within music teaching and within the student voice that may not necessarily have been able to do that in the past. We've started already with a series of happy hours. We're musicians, let's be honest, that's a great way to communicate. That really went down the idea of area of specialization, such as band directors, choral directors, orchestra directors, higher ed. So there was a little bit of something for everyone where everyone just kind of got together and had some frank discussion around their relationship with the organization and possible future directions. Upcoming in the next couple weeks, JJ again is going to be holding some listening sessions with some underrepresented voices as well that could include music educators of color, female band directors, transgendered singers, men teaching elementary music, and LGBTQIA plus teachers in more conservative areas of the state, but really also broadening the conversation out and really bringing voice to our board and to our constituencies in ways that haven't been.
That is fantastic. I love those inclusive affinity groups that are coming. That's such a unique new approach to the work from MMEA. So kudos to you guys for that, for really leading that charge forward to support teachers in that special way that we know is a proven effective way to just be supportive of folks who are feeling left out of conversation, especially at the state level. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, and I'll quote my my friend and colleague Shane Jensen in that all means all.
All means all. Shane Jensen. Definitely. We are literally getting so many quotes today. We're going to start a new t-shirt company, but the arts all means all. And I love that. And I think MMEA is really putting a very strong step forward in terms of supporting that notion that all really means all. I love that. Dr. Parker, will you close this out? Just what are the ways that you guys are communicating from Peabody Institute about changes that may occur, right? Adjustments that may need to be made along the way?
Well, we have two layers of communication. One is to our students and faculty, and one is to our patrons. Most of the time, the communication is electronic because that seems to be the way to go right now. The digital age is upon us, as we learned very quickly last spring. So mostly it's electronic. We do still have an old-fashioned mailing list that goes by paper mail that goes out with everybody. But one thing that we want to make sure that we communicate is for everybody to be flexible with what they think is going to happen.
That's
because
right.
we don't know. We're actually only planning ensembles and that kind of stuff for the fall, because who knows what's going to happen in the spring. I mean, we have an idea, but we don't know.
That's right.
So we're just putting out there for people to check in with us a lot, and we will communicate as best we can through all layers and avenues that are possible.
Thank you so much. That's really terrific. Thank you both so much. This has been so informative. We're going to move forward to the final and last panel. We're right on time, which is amazing. And thank you both for sharing your expertise. Thank you for your leadership at this time. We're very lucky to have you both as state arts leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alicia.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to bring up two arts educators, two Maryland music education rock stars. We've got Crystal Williams, who is an instrumental music teacher and a new teacher ambassador for Baltimore City Public Schools. She's also the music technology chair for MMEA, which is great. We're also going to bring up Thomas Pierre. Thomas Pierre is a national board certified vocal, general, and choral educator with Prince George's County Public Schools. He's also the 2020 CMA Foundation Music Teachers of Excellence awardee and a certified orchestral work educator. And he's the new member at large at MMEA. Hello, Crystal and Thomas.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's great to see you. So we are rounding this session out by hearing from two teachers. So Crystal, I'm going to start with you. Will you tell us, how has remote learning impacted teaching and learning for you and your students?
Oh, wow. Well, March 13th, I feel like that's going to be that day that is etched in many educators across Maryland's mind. It was such a surreal moment when I realized that I might not see them again. Although they kind of were like, oh, I'll see you in 2 weeks, or I'll see you. I kind of had that feeling that that wasn't going to be the case. So the first thing I did is I told everybody to take their instruments home.
Oh, bravo. Great.
Up to that point, we were supposed to be, that week, we were supposed to go to our assessments, our band assessments. So they'd been working, all year to this big moment that didn't happen. And having to break that to them was quite disappointing because, I service a lot of students who their first time playing an instrument is in my classroom, and they own that as a responsibility and a privilege. And for them to, understand that wasn't going to happen this year, especially for my seniors, was a little hard. However, it brought out some things that I realized they are deeply socially connected to my classroom beyond the music making, and it's through music, but their friendships and the way they interact, and they've grown as students and human beings. A lot of that has happened in my classroom. And so one of the things that we've been doing online, of course, trying to keep their skills up and trying to keep them playing. And I've been doing these challenges where I'll post some song that is more connected to what they listen to versus what I might have wanted them to do.
Yeah.
And they've kind of taken that in stride, and it brings a new excitement to their learning, as well as hosting these town halls with my students virtually. social emotional learning has been a big thing across education, but especially I feel like at my school, we've kind of been ahead of the cusp with our social emotional practices. So our students have come to become used to having that outlet. And so we've hosted town halls. We talk about current events and real issues through music, and talking about music that kind of connects to those experiences that some of them are having. So it's been really an emotional roller coaster for us, but I feel like a deeply necessary one as musicians, in developing musicians who can connect to the art, not just perform, but be able to actually connect and understand that the historical and the things that happen in our society and throughout time has always been through the arts, and now they're a part of that.
That's right. Now they're a part of that. I love that idea. Really helping them to center themselves in creativity during the middle of a time. We're in a double global pandemic, of course. COVID-19, of course, struck us in March, and then we've seen global uprisings around supporting Black and Brown communities against violence. And so, as students are experiencing this with us as adults in live time, I love that idea of students coming together and sharing, and of course, being unified by the music making. Thomas Pierre, what impact for you with you and your students? Now you are teaching younger students. Crystal is teaching high school students. She's teaching the Doves over in Baltimore City. And then your students are elementary students, correct, Thomas?
Yeah, K through 8.
K through 8. So what's the impact over there?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Alicia, for affording me the opportunity to be on this platform. Thank you. And I want to give a big shout out to Prince George's County Public School music teachers under the leadership of Judith Hawkins. A few weeks ago, I heard Angelica Brooks, our teacher of the year, flip remote learning to learning at a distance, learning from a distance. And I wish I would have done that at the beginning, to be honest. And I just want to be vulnerable and reflective and transparent, because I think it's critical, because some music teacher out there might feel the same way I felt. It was daunting at first. And I didn't think that I was successful. I was used to, just being a master teacher in my classroom and the Orff Schubert approach to teaching, where my children learn through singing, saying, moving, playing, and creating. And they were doing it face to face with each other in real time. And they were doing what they experienced. They did it instinctively. That's what kids do. They sing, they play, they move. And so it was hard for me, because the challenge was to engage my students in that same way I engaged them in the classroom. And it was a real challenge for me. And I honestly felt like a failure, because I was faced with learning a new discipline. Like, after going to school for years and teaching for over 2 decades, then I had to re-enroll to learn about distant learning. And it wasn't easy for me, because I learn differently as well. We talk about children learning differently, but I have a way of that I learn too, that is not always easily accommodated. And so, I struggled as a learner, because when I teach something, I have to internalize it, and all the gadgets and the apps and all these things that people are selling to make money. Although, thank God for Prince George's County, because, we were prepared with these platforms, because we use them.
Yes.
But I never used them outside of the classroom in a manner in which, I felt like I had to. So, and then,
what I'm hearing you say, Thomas, is so important, that educators are continuing to learn. Yeah. And so we have to give each other a little bit of grace and space. The same grace and space that we give our students when they're in our classrooms learning new skills, that teachers were learning new skills and applying them. And I saw at the end of the semester with your students, I saw a virtual performance.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Featured in our SEL guide. I want everyone to check it out. A virtual choir performance of your students singing passionately, independently, passionately, totally connected to their of course to the words, but also with really beautiful technique and skill.
And that was 3/4 into distant learning.
Got it.
That you know, and I also struggled, you know, during this time of racial awareness as an African American male. Can you believe it? I'm teaching, and I'm asking, and I'm answering a lot of questions, and I'm going through this as an African American male educator. So, you know, I was inspired by the virtual choir, but I used what was going on in the world and what students could connect to their everyday lives. And so we produced that virtual choir with that.
Well, I love seeing that. I hope everyone will check that out. It's in our SEL guide under the, I wrote the virtual choir chapter, and then I linked to your beautiful performance. We hope to add more performances. I want to talk a little bit about this summer. We only have a few minutes left. And you two are both alums of Maryland Centers for Creative Classrooms. You've attended Maryland State Department of Education trainings. Crystal is an MC3. She's our summer studio work. And then Thomas, you of course were on our Maryland Masterclass series committee when we brought Donald Lawrence to sing with 220 educators and community artists in 2 days, and we produced the concert like we do. So you guys know the kind of the high quality level of the work that we do in professional learning. This summer, we want to invite teachers. We are starting next Monday with our supervisors. We are going to design over the next 4 weeks an anti-racism in Maryland arts education program that will begin this summer. So we're looking at building cohorts of teachers that are interested in learning how to bring anti-racism as a foundational part of the teaching that occurs in their classroom, something that SEL and culturally relevant pedagogy can sit on top of, but your classroom has to be really rooted in that anti-racist mindset. We've all learned over the course of the last few weeks, right? There are no race neutral policies, there are no race neutral programs. So we really look forward to working collaboratively with teachers all across the state to ensure that our programs, our curriculum, and all the pieces that come with it are centered in an anti-racist mindset. We also this summer are going to be delving into social emotional learning through the arts. We're going to be delving into mental health. We'll be able to offer free mental health first aid for youth for Maryland educators beginning this August, which is great. If you want to be able to make sure that you are able to support and refer students properly and staff, because we all have to take care of one another. I think that's important. Crystal, will you give us just a minute or two, a minute maybe, about what you're planning for the summer? What's on your agenda for learning and, of course, relaxation?
Okay, I'm gonna start with the relaxation.
There.
I am a teacher that works year round. When people say teachers don't work year round, they must not know too many teachers.
They don't know any teachers.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
year round. I normally would have been having a summer camp with my students where they get paid to learn how to play their instrument and the in-depths of being a leader and health and fitness. And I do that free of charge. Well, they get paid, I don't. And so this is going to be the first summer I've had in about 4 years free. I've decided to put my family first. And I planned a series of, actually have scheduled out an intensive program for my son in the absence of summer camp.
Bravo.
We're going hiking and canoeing, and I'm spending a lot of time outdoors. He's an only child, so I am his friend right now, and I am his playmate, and I'm owning that just as being his first teacher. And understanding how important that is to educators to send students to school who have their first teacher guiding them to how to be an incredible human being. So that's what I'm working on.
Absolutely. When I talked to you yesterday, Chris, when we called you yesterday, you were just out from the woods with your son,
Yes.
hiking over in the state park, right?
Yes.
That's great. Being in touch with nature. We love to see that. And you do a lot of work collaborating specifically, I believe, with Black marching band conductors. I see you all the time on Facebook in those networking opportunities, workshops, presenting your work. Where can we find that work from you?
I will be partaking in another panel tomorrow with the Women's Band Directors International, talking about race. We're going to really dive into what that looks like as a Black musician, composer, teacher, educator, performer in those spaces that for some of us and many of us has been very exclusive to the dominant culture. And so we're going to be diving into that talk. And then for MMEA, I'll be presenting as the newly appointed music technology chair, a seminar on introducing students or teaching through smartphones.
Awesome.
That's a big piece of what I do is accessibility to underserved populations. So a lot of the work that I'll be diving into this summer is going to be how to improve that inequity and improve those connections to populations that technology is going to be really important in the next school year for them to have access, and trying to be as knowledgeable as possible in those areas to better serve my students.
Awesome. I love that. We are expecting and anticipating a shortage of technology to occur, that wave to occur in late fall. So it is advised in our Arts Together report that even when you're beginning to create digital lessons for your students, that you make sure that some of your students may have to use a cell phone as equipment breaks or breaks down. There may not be new computers to replace those things for a period of time. So I love that idea. I'm glad that teachers will have that. And Thomas, will you just close us out? What are you planning for the summer?
Well, I promise you I'll rest for a couple of minutes. I'll rest a couple of minutes this summer, but I don't want to be behind. I don't want to be behind. I have to really internalize this learning and be prepared for the students in the fall. So I'm going to be taking a course, and I took a course with this guy. This would be my third time, Doug Goodkin, and he teaches a jazz course. And it's not just any jazz course, but this white man, he talks about how Africans and African Americans built the nation through music and the arts and humanities. And I learned something new every time I take the course.
Oh, you've taken it before. Got it. You're going to take it again.
I'm going to take it. There's always last year. Every year is different. Last year we took it in New Orleans. We were supposed to do it in New York this summer, but we're going to do it virtually. And then I'm going to be working with my colleagues, meeting them. And Renee Boyer gave me an assignment about a month ago that I haven't finished. And if she's listening, I know she's upset and she's expecting it to be done. But I'm doing things like that, trying to internalize learning and really, if anyone wants to know about the courses, there's a list of courses. You can go to the San Francisco ORF and you can look at all these courses. You can look at courses, movement in the classroom, all these different things that you can do.
That's fantastic. Thomas, when I send you back to the audience, will you put a link in the chat so people can sign up?
Absolutely.
And I thank you, both of you. You guys are rock stars and national leaders. These folks are national leaders in the arts, and we are lucky to have them here in Maryland. Thank you, Christy Williams.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we're going to close out, everyone. So thank you so much. Just to remind you, we want to make sure that this summer we are supporting professional learning that builds social, emotional learning competence, culturally responsive competence, all rooted in an anti-racist framework. So we'll really be helping teachers to come together to look at and evaluate your own programs to elevate the work before students return to us in the fall. We want to prepare teachers and educators for physical distancing procedures and also level up our use of technology and our strategies for maintaining safety in classrooms. Arts Together, the report, we hope that you all read it, calls for professional learning to be leveraged to increase the capacity of all of us so that we can support students in safety, we can support students in learning, we can support students in community, creativity, and what was the third one Andrew put in? It had to be collaboration, right? So we want to make sure that we're here to support students. The fine arts education is a right, not a privilege in Maryland. And our response in light of our dual global pandemics has been dedicated to expanding opportunities for students, expanding opportunities for educators, making sure that we are creating inclusive pathways forward to elevate students, families, and communities. Thank you all for joining us. We hope you'll join us on Friday. We have a distinguished panel looking at theater, at the theater season. And next week, we will round out and finish this series with media arts. Thank you to our distinguished guests. Thank you to all of you for attending. This has been really great to see all of you. And again, goodbye. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us here in our homes all around the state as we come together to support music educators and general music instruction. And I see Jen Kaufman is here, who of course is our general music leader for MMEA and our president-elect now. So it's really great to see you. And we hope that you have a great time diving into that report. Please send us any questions that you may have. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.